He got away! Kurapika burst through the penthouse door in a rage. The bastard actually got away! Before you could process the situation, he was storming through the room, loudly slamming open drawers until his handgun came into sight. Wait, slow down! You stood abruptly, nearly knocking your chair backwards in the process of trying to obstruct his exit. What happened? Your breath almost stilled for an instant. You could see the lethal crimson glow rimming the edges of his black contacts, an eclipse to end worlds. The plan's been compromised. I'm going after him. Though his voice wasn't raised, the anger bubbling beneath the surface was unmistakable. You instantly launched yourself in front of the door. Get out of the way, traveler. There's no time. I can't let you do this right now. If you try and stop me, I'll consider you my enemy. He raised his right hand at your eye level and cut you down where you stand. The blonde's unfeeling tone chilled the blood in your veins, a stark contrast to the two bonfire black irises that were now burning into you. And it was all you could do to not flinch as his murderous Hatsu flooded the room. Its potency was staggering. Your defensive Nen triggered almost immediately, strictly on reflex. His pinky finger lifted, and his chains appeared. Do you really think I care who I kill right now? Your expression hardened, and your ken lowered. I know you better than that, Kurapika. For an instant you prayed calling his bluff would not be the last thing you ever did. In this situation you were a fly on the wall just waiting to be smashed, and every cell in your body seemed to be screaming at you to run. I'll ask you one more time. Move. A demand, not a question. Just listen, please! He loomed over you, impatience seething off his erratic aura. But for whatever reason, he didn't strike. Think for a second. If you go in without a plan and die, you'll never complete your objective. Don't patronize me right now, traveler, I swear. I'm not! I'm reasoning with you! You held your hands up and took a breath. We need to fall back for now. There will be other leads. Ugh. He scoffed and rolled his eyes. A flagrant act of passive aggression. But it was decidedly an improvement from the aggressive aggression he was exhibiting a few seconds ago. Spare me your unremarkable platitudes. I overheard something during the surveillance while you were gone. Something important. Finally, it appeared you now held Kurapika's attention, albeit an impatient and fidgety version of it. The 10 Dawns have these things called shadow beasts. You think I don't know that already? Let me finish, damn it! You hissed. They planned an ambush around you! What? Yeah! Just before you got back, I overheard on the radio interference that they were luring you to their rallying point. How could they have possibly? They saw at least one of us during the stakeout. They knew we were coming. Kurapika seemed to contemplate this for a moment. I can't be sure, but I believe they think we're members spying for a rival gang. Based on our behavior, I do understand why they would jump to that conclusion. But if that's the case, we have no way of proving that we're not. And I don't see their information fishing turning out much to our favor. You grimaced at the thought of all the fruitless torture that could ensue upon your potential capture. Fine. Noted. Please move. How can you— This changes nothing. I'm still going. He moved to step forward, but you placed both hands on the front of his shoulders. Listen, Pika. You're powerful. No one denies that. But your Nen is specifically geared towards taking down spiders. It's not at all suited for an ambush situation like this. I know you know this too. If you go now, you're going to die. You took advantage of his silence to speak once more. This isn't the end, okay? We need an alternate course of action. At last, Kurapika's chains finally disappeared. What do you propose? He punctuated his words through clenched teeth. as if admitting to your logic had put a literal bad taste in his mouth. We already know that the spider's objective has something to do with the auction, so we know they won't travel far from our sights until then. And you still haven't met with Hisoka yet to find out what he knows. Now isn't the time for rash actions. Kurapika said nothing for what felt like an eternity. I just think you need to consider these things. If you still decide to go, I'm coming with you. But I implore you not to. Fine, I get it. Drop it already, okay? His posture stayed rigid, and when you moved to lay a comforting hand on him, he swatted it away, making a swift path back towards the bed. Try as you might, you couldn't help but feel a bit scorned. Granted, Kurapika had every right to be angry, but as a rule he usually handled you more gracefully. Any other day he would have thanked you for your logic, but his demeanor now exuded a bitter undertone that made you feel like you were holding him back. Fine. It was clear by the way that he whipped out his laptop and ignored you that he had no intention of discussing this further. Not much else you could do but let him brood for a bit. But then a thought struck you. Perhaps some soft music would bring back his refined side. Without another word, you sat at the mini grand piano and started playing something soothing he commented he liked once before. Not 60 seconds passed before his sharp tongue lashed out once more, barely audible. You could do something more productive with your time. Your lips curled in annoyance at his words. Maybe you could not walk into traps laid by the enemy. That's what you wanted to say. No, don't engage. Diffuse. He has good reason to be frustrated right now. You sighed your exasperation out, letting your cruel retort trickle down from your brain space and float away on the music. It wasn't long before he mirrored your sigh, his being a little more prolonged and harsh, and you felt like now would be a good time to make use of the item Melody procured for you. With tentative fingers you started the next new song. It wasn't perfect, as you hadn't had much time to practice it, but you figured Kurapika wouldn't mind your minor mistakes. The room grew still as the new haunting string of notes filled the air, and your testy companion shifted on the bed covers. That sounds familiar. Ah! He instantly shot up from his slouched position, which you didn't see with your back turned to him. How do you know that song? You weren't sure why, but it sounded like there was malice in his voice. Oh, so you do know it? Yes, but you shouldn't. Huh? What do you mean? You asked innocently, and you didn't stop playing until you felt a hand constrict around your wrist. His motion was so swift and unexpected that he could have snapped your neck and you would have never seen it coming. Do you intend to mock my culture's coming-of-age ceremony? Pika! Only clan elders are permitted to play that song. Otherwise, it's an insult to their memory. He squeezed your wrist almost to the point of pain, and you began to panic and backpedal. I'm sorry. I had no idea. Melody helped me find it, and I just thought... Is nothing sacred to you at all? How many graves of my brethren did you have to desecrate to find it? He asked with a casual ruthlessness. An approximation will suffice. You scoffed and shrunk under his gaze, struck utterly speechless by his accusation. He released your wrist, but there was no less condemnation in his features. You felt tears well up in your eyes, and took large strides to the door to hide it. You paused in the entryway for as brief a moment as you could. The sheet music's in the wardrobe, you mumbled solemnly. Do what you want with it. With that, you were halfway down the hall. You didn't even take the elevator. You couldn't wait. You wanted off that floor immediately. What's come over him? You wondered to high heaven as you descended the many flights of stairs. I thought a little taste of home would make him happy. You frowned miserably and moped into the lobby. Where else could you really hide when you shared a room? On the surface, Kurapika appeared to have endless patience. But when it came to anything surrounding his heritage or the spider, he truly had the shortest fuse imaginable. You originally planned to go out and come back later, after giving him some time to cool off, and apologize your heart out. But you realized you left your room key and wallet upstairs, and you couldn't bother him with your stupidity now. So here you were, stranded until further notice. After the guilt ebbed a bit, you busied yourself with some web surfing on your phone. At least I stopped him from doing something reckless. You tried to comfort yourself with that fact. Suddenly, the terrifying image of his chains resurfaced in your mind, and your stomach churned. Was he really going to do it? What conditions would he have set? No, you knew he wouldn't. You shook the very notion from your head with physical force. No, I gave him more than ample opportunity to strike when I lowered my ken. It wasn't too long before you suddenly sensed Kurapika's presence nearby. It wasn't really a Nen thing. You just knew? You bit your lip fiercely as your nerves bubbled up. Would he forgive you for such a slight to his culture? He might actually send you away for this. And even if he didn't go that far, you were still not mentally prepared for another mercurial outburst from him. Unfortunately, it was too late to run from these fears now, as the man in question was now standing right beside you. Sadness set in his eyes at the unease in yours. They were a soft and earnest silver. He had removed his contacts, and all shades of red had dissipated. I've come to beg your forgiveness, he said with a sincere and proper formality. Huh? You blinked at him in confusion. During your prolonged pause of bewilderment, he pulled a small rectangular case from his pocket. Those things I said to you. I want you to know I didn't mean them. You probably know that already, considering you can read me like a book when you want to. But even so, I hope you'll accept this token of my apology. From his hands you took and opened the slick black box. Therein rested a firestone necklace on a bed of plush midnight velvet. You had never seen one in real life before, and it almost struck you breathless. Said type of gemstone was known for being mined in the turbulent mountains of a heavy natural gas. Over time, the rock encapsulates the dense molecules, leaving them to churn and swirl behind a glassy, polished surface, entrapping what appears to be a living galaxy of adolescence within. The ones you'd seen in advertisements usually had a full spectrum of colors, the thin film interference one might see when rain meets an oil spill on the pavement. But somehow this one was almost purely crimson. In layman's terms, it pretty much looked like someone shoved a collapsing star inside of a ruby and called it a day. And it was clear that Kurapika spared no expense on it. The colors warped and flowed in its signature lifelike motion, and you only managed to tear your eyes away from the optical phenomenon when Kurapika spoke again. I bought it for you the other day to wear at the auction, since you said your favorite color was red. Although, that might not be the case anymore. This is excessive, Kurapika. And I'm not mad at you anyway. You look down at the floor. I feel really bad. I'm to blame for that. His frown deepened. My behavior earlier was abhorrent. I deliberately blinded myself to your intentions because I needed an outlet for my anger. It was wrong of me to lash out at you the way that I did. His gaze fixed itself upon the wrist he had grabbed earlier, regretfully assessing it for damage. Not only did I threaten you when you tried to protect me from myself, I added insult to injury by throwing your thoughtful gesture right back in your face and... Kurapika stopped talking abruptly, as if recoiling in the face of his own cruelty. Wow, I'm such a spiteful person. His expression was positively contrite now, and his hands clenched to fists by his sides. I honestly can't comprehend why you stick around me. Well, the pay's good, you said flatly, and his shoulders sank. Yes, I suppose that's true. I'm kidding, you doofus! You grinned and pushed him lightly with the flat of your palm. Let's go back upstairs. I forgot my room key. Are you sure? Big round eyes gawked at you. Kurapika rarely stuttered. He must have been unconvinced that you could forgive him so quickly. Why don't you let me take you out and make it up to you? You can make your own tea today. How about that? You smirked and he smiled, and you could see the visible relief in his tired features. Kurapika felt a weight lifted from his chest when the two of you stepped back into the elevator together. When the stainless steel doors closed, he displayed his palm. May I? Huh? You noted him eyeing the box in your hands, and gave it up. Oh. He gently lifted the necklace from its silken resting place, and opened the clasp. You turned to the mirrored backing, and lifted your hair as he delicately draped the jewel round your neck. It really is beautiful, Kurapika. Thank you. No thanks necessary. When I saw it in its case, I figured it was long overdue to find an owner worthy of its caliber. Your stomach flipped at his words, and his eyes locked onto yours in the mirror's reflection. You were certain you'd never get used to Kurapika's elegant art of roundabout flattery. While cherishing the gem betwixt your fingers, you felt yourself being moved. Kurapika spun you to look at him directly, placing both hands on your shoulders before leaning in close. You'll always wear it for me, won't you? Oh, wow! Fire shot through your veins, and you felt your chest and neck start to heat up. Something about the way Kurapika asked that was just so intimate. There was an uncharacteristic vulnerability, an urgent need in his penetrating stare. In all honesty, you wanted to object to that request. The artifact you beheld was much too fancy for everyday wear. But how on earth could you deny him when he was making a face like that? Of course! You blurted out too loudly, causing him to smile warmly at you. He must have been satisfied with your answer, for there was a newfound spring in his step when the doors opened, and he strode ahead to open the penthouse door. Upon arrival, you excused yourself to the bathroom, and it took the sounds of Kurapika rustling in the suite's kitchen to realize that you'd been staring at your accessorized appearance for far too long. When you emerged, you found him pursing his lips slightly at a ceramic mug. From the floating aroma on the air, you deduced he had made his usual tea. What's wrong? Is the milk spoiling? No, it's just not as good as when you make it. You laughed at his pitiful predicament. At last, after a long day, the two of you said good night, retiring to your respective sides of the gargantuan bed. Despite his protests, you remade Kurapika's tea for him after he pouted at it like a child. The hotel room was silent for a while, save for the quiet hum of the air conditioning unit turning on and off. Traveler. You heard him say, so soft you were certain you imagined it. Are you asleep yet? No. You turned to face him. Is everything okay? Would you permit me to apologize again for earlier? Are you still thinking about that? I told you I'm not angry with you. Although, if I'm being completely honest, it did hurt my feelings that you thought I robbed a grave to get that music. I only said that to be spiteful. I never once believed you capable of such depravity, if it's any consolation. Which it probably isn't. It just got me thinking. This isn't the first time I've started conflict between us. And I guess I'm just wondering, how many times will I be harsh with you before you wake up and realize your loyalty is better spent elsewhere? His silky voice wavered slightly. Once more? 2 times? Which day will it be enough? And I'll walk through those elevator doors to find you've moved on. And rightfully so. The silence that followed his words was somber, aching. You couldn't fight the urge to comfort him. Come here, Kurapika. There was a pause in the blackness before you heard a rustle under the covers. As soon as his fingertips brushed your arm, you yanked him into a horizontal hug. It must have been the darkness that gave you the courage to choose such a bold display of affection. The result was a tiny but audible catch in Kurapika's breath, but he tentatively returned the embrace nonetheless. You asked how many times, right? As many as it takes. You plopped your cheek onto a mop of blonde. I know how sorry you are. Stress brings out the worst in all of us. I know you get a little excited sometimes, but you're not an unkind person. Thank you, traveler. His posture relaxed. It means a lot to hear that from you. You held him like this for a moment, treasuring his warmth in your arms, before your mind caught up with you. In a fit of embarrassment, you lifted your hands from his back, leaving Kurapika an opening to pull away. Sorry about that. I totally forced that on you. I'm not making you feel uncomfortable, am I? Not at all, he stated calmly, making no efforts to move. In fact, if it's all the same to you, I wouldn't mind staying like this for a little while. With his permission, you allowed your hands to rest in their previous spot around his shoulders. I can't remember the last time I had arms around me. That confession of his saddened you, but Kurapika didn't seem fazed by it. His tone was dreamy, like he was reminiscing about his past, or simply falling close to slumber. You dared to let your hand wander, climbing up to his head to rake your fingers through his soft hair. He made a little noise of satisfaction and melted further in your arms. That feels nice. Your touch was so gentle as it traced patterns through his hair. Not so soft as to tickle, but tender and caring enough to tug at his heartstrings. Kurapika realized he'd made a terrible mistake today. He almost lost you. Once more you heard a sigh from him, but for some reason it sounded less at peace than the last. I really am sorry, you know. Oh my gosh! You rolled your eyes and almost laughed. Look, would it make you feel better if I said something mean back to you? I don't know. Maybe. Kurapika's brow tightened at the impending words. Okay, you dirty, high-strung conjurer. You felt him chuckle at that, shaking you lightly and ghosting warm breath against your collarbone. It's no use, traveler. There's not a mean bone in your body. It was almost like you just insulted him using dialogue out of a bad western. For all the harm it did, you might as well have called him a rootin'-tootin' varmint. I don't know about that. You sang sarcastically. I think my insult was pretty clever. I'd say we're about even now, but that wouldn't quite be fair since I clearly slayed you with that one. Kurapika laughed again and pulled away just enough to meet your eyes. The slightest fuchsia hue rested in his irises, but it was unclear if it came from him or the glowing city lights behind you. What? Melody was right, as usual. What did she say this time? She said I was lucky to have you. There was that sappy gaze of his again, and you were grateful for the darkness to hide any signs of your befuddlement. You ruffled his hair to break the tension. Get some sleep, Blondie. Kurapika smiled and let his eyes flutter closed, and it was now, resting in the crook of your shoulder, that he began to reminisce on the first time you called him that. To be continued.